You've probably seen the headlines. AI automation is coming for your job. Robots in warehouses, algorithms writing code, chatbots handling customer calls. The whole thing feels like watching storm clouds gather on the horizon while you're standing in an open field. But here's what most of those articles won't tell you. The real story isn't about replacement. It's about a quieter shift happening underneath the noise, one that's creating entirely new kinds of work that didn't exist 5 years ago. This isn't financial advice or a guarantee. It's about understanding a trend that's reshaping how value gets created. And if you're someone who works with information, solves problems, or builds things for clients, this matters more than you might think. Picture a factory floor from the 1990s. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, rows of workers assembling parts by hand. Now picture that same floor today, half empty but producing twice as much. The machines didn't just replace people. They changed what people do there. That same pattern is unfolding in offices, agencies, and remote workspaces right now. AI automation isn't a single wave that washes everything away. It's more like how a river reshapes a landscape over time, carving new channels while leaving some formations untouched. The jobs that feel most threatened are the ones built entirely on repetitive information processing, data entry, basic report generation, first draft content creation. These tasks are like low-hanging fruit for automation systems. They're predictable, pattern-based, and don't require contextual judgment. But here's where it gets interesting. When you remove those tasks from someone's workday, you don't eliminate the role. You transform it. And this is the part most people miss when they're busy worrying about being replaced. Think about what happens when a financial analyst no longer spends 3 hours pulling data into spreadsheets. That time opens up for interpretation, for asking better questions, for spotting patterns that the automation can't flag on its own. The real opportunity in AI automation isn't about learning to code neural networks or becoming a machine learning engineer. It's about becoming the person who knows what to do with automated outputs. The human in the loop. If you're finding this useful, consider subscribing. We explore these shifts every week without the hype or the fear. Let me paint a picture of what this actually looks like in practice. Imagine a small marketing agency, maybe 8 people working out of a converted warehouse with exposed brick and the smell of old coffee in the air. Before automation tools, the junior team members spent their mornings pulling analytics reports, reformatting data, and creating first drafts of client updates. Now, most of that happens in minutes through integrated platforms. Did the agency fire those junior employees? No. They promoted them into strategy roles faster than ever before. The bottleneck shifted from production to judgment, and judgment is something AI still struggles with. This is the pattern worth paying attention to. AI automation compresses the skill ladder. Tasks that used to take years to graduate beyond now get handled by software. The question becomes, what's left after compression? What's left is the messy, contextual, relationship-dependent work. The call with a nervous client who needs reassurance, not just data. The creative leap that connects 2 unrelated ideas into something new. The moment of pushback when an automated recommendation doesn't fit the real situation. These aren't tasks you can easily script or systematize. They require presence, experience, and what we might call earned intuition. But here's a flip side worth considering. Not everyone benefits equally from this shift. If your entire value proposition was built on being faster at repetitive tasks, the ground is moving under your feet. Speed at execution is becoming a commodity. Machines will always win that race eventually. The ethical tension here is real. We're essentially asking people to level up their skills while the rules are still being written. That's not a small ask, especially for workers who've spent decades mastering processes that are now being automated. So what actually works? Based on observable patterns across industries, a few approaches seem to create real leverage. First, focus on becoming the translator. Every organization implementing AI automation needs people who understand both the technology and the human context. These aren't necessarily coders. They're project managers, analysts, and team leads who can ask the right questions. What should the automation optimize for? What exceptions need human review? What does a good outcome actually look like? Picture someone sitting at a cluttered desk, late afternoon light coming through the blinds. They're not building the AI system. They're deciding how it fits into a workflow that involves real people with real constraints. That role didn't exist 10 years ago. Now it's everywhere. Second, develop skills that compound over time rather than depreciate. Writing that persuades, not just informs. Analysis that generates insight, not just summaries. Relationship management that builds trust through repeated interactions. These capabilities are hard to automate because they depend on accumulated context. Think of it like the difference between annual tree rings and a photograph. AI can capture a snapshot instantly, but the deep understanding that comes from years of experience, the rings that show drought years and growth spurts, that takes time to develop. Third, stay close to the implementation. The people who understand how AI automation actually works in practice, its limitations, failure modes, and quirks, become invaluable. Public technical documentation and research databases are worth exploring if you want to understand what's really happening beyond the marketing claims. Here's another flip side moment. There's a version of this future where hybrid roles become incredibly rewarding. Higher value work, more creative freedom, better compensation for genuine expertise. But there's also a version where the transition period is brutal for anyone caught unprepared. The honest answer is that both things are probably true at once. Some people will thrive, others will struggle, and the difference often comes down to timing, awareness, and the willingness to adapt before you're forced to. AI automation raises hard questions we're only beginning to grapple with. If efficiency is the primary goal, what gets optimized away that we might actually value? The junior role that taught patience? The slow process that built deep understanding? The human interaction that felt meaningful, even if it wasn't strictly necessary? These aren't questions with clean answers, but they're worth sitting with, especially if you're making decisions about your own skill development or career direction. Let me leave you with a concrete takeaway. The next time you encounter an AI automation tool, don't just ask whether it can do your job. Ask what part of your job it can't do, and then ask whether you're actually good at that part. That gap between what AI handles and what remains is where your value lives now. The question is whether you're actively developing the capabilities that matter in that space, or coasting on skills that are slowly being commoditized. This is about potential trends, not certainty. Results depend on your situation, your effort, and your willingness to experiment. But the shift is real, and understanding it early creates options that won't exist later. What's one task in your current work that you think AI automation will change in the next few years? Drop it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious what you're seeing in your own field. If this gave you something to think about, subscribe and hit the notification bell. We go deep on these topics every week. No hype, no guarantees, just honest analysis of where things are heading.